Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Women Who Rock Investigates, where branding just got even better. Our media source provides case studies in the areas of breaking news reports, health policy and government, human resources, and more. Our handpicked experts provide our audiences with credible information to validate the latest in these studies. Women Who Rock Investigates are heard over most of your radio podcasts, such as Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, and iHeartRadio, just to name a few. We are interested in getting our experts heard around the globe, and we have partnered with Live 365 and Airtime Pro Radio to extend their voices of claims and theories. Join us each Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time after Women Who Rock with Success. Now, let's go to the show.
Good morning and welcome to Women Who Rock Investigates, and this is your host, Ms. Diane Winbush, and so thank everyone for tuning in on the show. And so we know that October, it's two things that we look at in the month of October. One is the breast cancer awareness, and the second one is domestic violence. And domestic violence is a component where the majority of those who suffer from this type of epidemic are women. Perhaps there are men also that perhaps maybe have claims in the domestic violence field, but there are women that go through this more than men. And so just to do a little fact sheet on that, on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men, and that is a large ratio in numbers as to the women that suffer by the hand of their partners, and a lot of times individuals may not even know what domestic violence is. So take, for example, just a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to an actual case where this individual had went in and she had filed a claim against I think it was a tenant or something like that, and so it was not actually physically domestic violence, and it's not domestic violence just because it's sexual harassment, and so sometimes we have to know how to identify between the two as to which is which and where does each actual issue belong. And so with domestic violence, it can be verbal and it can be physical domestic violence, and so it's a difference between the two of that and sexual harassment. And so that's the reason why we wanted to be able to bring you some tools and resources today from our experts in regards to sexual harassment. So in regards to domestic violence, I'm sorry about that. And so today on our panel, we will be having David Mandel, who is the founder and executive of Safe and Together Institute. Also, our next guest on the panel will be author and speaker and clinician Shari Botwin, and we have speaker and author Darla Collinet that is also scheduled to be on the show on today. And so with that being said, we're just going to go in here and we're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with you on the show. Okay, and we're back, and we have one guest that has shown up. And so good morning, and this is Diane, and so welcome to the panel this morning.
Hi, Diane. Thanks for having me.
Okay, great. So this is David. Okay, great. So, David, would you tell us a little bit about you and about what you do?
Sure. I'm the executive director of the Safe and Together Institute, and we're an organization dedicated to doing training consulting around domestic violence prevention in the United States and abroad. We target professionals. We're not a direct service organization. but we work to really improve outcomes for domestic violence survivors and their kids, and actually also help systems help the perpetrators of violence as well.
Okay, great. And so what was your passion to be able to get this started for women? What drove you to this?
I grew up in a household where I saw a lot of respect between my parents. My father was a great role model for me in terms of respecting my mother, and never said a bad word around women. And then when I got to college, I really got an education, really as a man, that women I knew and cared about were afraid of violence being perpetrated against them, sexual assault being perpetrated against them, and their fear was related to men. It wasn't anybody. It was for men, and it really made me reflect on what it means to be a man, and that really started me down this road where I eventually started doing work with men who are arrested for perpetrating domestic violence, and did that work for years, and then started training professionals to do a better job, and it just took off from there.
Okay, fine. So if you would share a little bit about, as I was attempting to do before, and that was to be able to help the audience to be able to understand a little bit more about domestic violence, because sometimes we get confused as to what domestic violence is versus sexual harassment. So I saw some cases where individuals had filed, some complaints, and they were not domestic violence. It was actually sexual harassment, and so the judge told them so. So would you share with us a little bit about domestic violence and some of the components that comes with domestic violence?
Sure. Domestic violence, I think when most people think about domestic violence, they think about, somebody punching somebody in the face or assaulting them physically. Domestic violence absolutely includes, all those things. It includes physical assault. It includes threats. It can include things like strangulation that people don't necessarily want to talk about. It can include sexual assault. It can include stalking. And I think each of these things, people think about, nobody's jumping out of the bushes at me, they're not stalking me. But if you're with a partner who is checking up on you, checking on where you are, checking your phone, showing up places, at your mother's house when not supposed to be there, sitting outside your workplace, when you're working to see who you're interacting with, all these behaviors are part of domestic violence, and some are arrestable. Some can get somebody arrested, but not all of them are, and a lot of them are going to be verbal abuse, calling somebody names, putting them down, putting down their parenting. So there's a whole variety of scenarios that we think about with domestic violence, and really a lot of times people don't understand it's a pattern of behavior that often unfolds over time. It doesn't start with hitting usually. It can start with these other behaviors. And it's about trying to control what somebody else does and says, who they relate to, what kind of work they might do, how they're a parent, and so it can interfere with somebody's employment. It can interfere with the way they relate to their family. And so a lot of times the way that it's going on is all of a sudden you go from being this happy person to this person who's really stressed and worried about what the other person's going to do and how they're going to react, and that starts dominating your life and your decisions. Not, I want to go and see my friend, or I think it'd be great to take the kids here. Everything gets second guessed because you're worried about the other person's reaction.
So who is responsible for reporting domestic violence? Because a lot of times we see situations, we see incidents, and then we feel that we have the right to, walk away or dismiss some type of behavior that we are observing physically with our eyes, or perhaps maybe we have heard it from, maybe like a friend or a colleague or what have you. So who is responsible? Because a lot of times individuals try to run away from their roles as to when they see abuse. So who is responsible for reporting domestic violence?
Well, I think what you're saying is, how do people help somebody they know and care about and love who may be a victim of domestic violence, right? And I think that's really the most important question is, so what do you do if a loved one of yours you suspect or know they're being abused? And I think One, obviously, is if you're observing a scene, an actual in-the-moment scene of violence or situation of violence, the best thing is to call law enforcement, to intervene, because bystanders stepping in can actually get hurt and get attacked themselves. But that's not going to be the predominant thing. You're gonna see friends and family, like I said, acting strangely. Somebody you love who had a job they loved quitting that job, or showing up and saying, "Well, I got to get home because he's going to be really upset." And I think more often than not, people are stuck with what to say to that person, how to support them, how to discuss it. And we produced a friends and family ally guide this year in the context of COVID to really give people some greater tools to help their loved ones who are in that situation, and how to talk to them and what not to say. Because I think a lot of times people will want to say the right thing, but actually say something that may push somebody away or blame them. And so you don't want to say to somebody, what did you do to cause it? Why did you get him so upset? Well, you shouldn't have been running around with those people. Those are the wrong things to say. You want to make sure you communicate to somebody who's being abused that it's not their fault. Nothing they did justify the other person getting violent with them. That you want to be there for them and support them. That you want to, let them know the ways that you can help them. So I think there's sort of formal reporting, like calling the police if somebody's immediately in danger. But I think a lot of times people are looking for help. How do I help my loved one who is in this situation, and what do I say to them?
Okay, that's fair enough. Because as I stated, sometimes individuals may be in a situation where they may. I was when I was a child, I actually saw it. Where I think we were coming either from a person's house from visiting or something like that when we were a child, and we actually saw it. And so even with that, our grandparents, which that was no excuse, they were older, but they passed on by. They passed on by the individual. They were parked on the side of the road, and it was like a cat fight that was going on. And I think we were about like 10 or 11 or something like that, me and my sister and I. And so it's not good enough. Sometimes we can be able to be the one that can be able to stop, domestic violence from happening and occurring. So now, in regards to domestic violence, now I know that we see a small number on this in regards to the workplace, because I know that there is not a lot of that goes on, but there are sometimes it will occur even on jobs as well. And so I wanted to ask that question, and you can to see if you can be able to touch on that real briefly as to what an individual can be able to do, because I want to explain just a real quick scenario. And so I think it's we live here in the South, and so there are a few issues that came up where the individuals, their loved ones, came to the jobs at these Walmarts in Arkansas and in Shelby County, and just came in there and just blasted them away. Of course, we know that starts from the home, but I know that it just did not start at work overnight either. I think that there are some things that may have led up where they have been, people have seen them arguing on the parking lot and they didn't do anything.
That's right. So I think you're right, and I know this show is focused on women and success, and I think it's the intersection of domestic violence and coercive control. So the term that's being used a lot more is this idea of coercive control, because it really communicates that a lot of this issue is about making somebody do something, controlling what they do, forcing them to do it, and that if you can understand that if I'm that person who's trying to be abusive or controlling, I'm going to often try to take away your choices. I'm going to try to take away your relationships. I'm going to try to make me the center of your world, that you're going to do what I want you to do. So your employment may be a threat to me. Your employment may be a place where I'm like, no, you have friends there that I don't know. You get money that might help you leave or make you less dependent on me. So I may feel threatened. So a lot of control goes around where is she going? What kind of work is she doing? Like if she's a bartender, I don't like you talking to men. You shouldn't be working at the bar. if any kind of workplace that might have males in it, it's going to be, maybe an issue where she gets accused of cheating. So all those things. So when you think about the intersection of domestic violence in the workplace, you can think about those. You can think about if somebody gets injured, they might not be able to do their job and go to work. And we know there's a lot of women who are taking sick time, who are taking that sick time because they've been abused and they can't physically come to work. They're stressed. They're sick from the stress, or they can't show up and be embarrassed because of the injuries. So when you look at this, that it becomes a big employment issue, and then when you get on top of it is employers not necessarily being supportive, and then firing somebody, not giving them a promotion. We were working with the Ministry of Defense in the United Kingdom, or the military, and they told us a case was brought to us that where a service person, a female, was a victim of abuse by her boyfriend who was in the same unit, and she was about to get discharged. And because of the work we did with them through our colleagues, he was moved out of that unit. He was sanctioned, and she actually is up for promotion now. But that's that's a kind of very specific idea of if it's handled poorly, not only are you being abused by your partner, but you may suffer consequences from your employer as well. And we don't want to see that happen.
Oh, wow. Absolutely. I just thought I had to interject that in there real quick. Sometimes we don't talk about it in the workplace and what have you, but I think it goes on there. But sometimes individuals say, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I don't want to call my name and put me in the office and what have you. But a lot of times you can be able to save someone's life as well when sometimes we, speak up. And a lot of times individuals feel, well, it's not my duty. Of course, it is your duty. It's your role. If you see abuse that is occurring, that is your role and your responsibility, all of our responsibility. So tell us a little bit about, David, about the Safe and Together Institute. I mean, when I saw the Safe and Together, I'm like, okay, wow. But then when I saw the Institute part on the tail end of it, I'm like, oh, wow.
So the name Safe and Together, I'm happy to talk to you about it, Diane. The name Safe and Together comes from this idea that we're dealing a lot and focused on domestic violence where kids are present in the home. And the name Safe and Together comes from this idea that kids are best served if they can be kept together with that domestic violence survivor, the victim, and kept safe and together with them, whether in their own home, whether in a shelter, whether someplace else, and even in continuing contact with that person who's chosen violence, because that may be an important person to them, but we still want those kids to be safe and that adult to be safe. So the Safe and Together Institute is dedicated to training professionals, social workers, therapists, judges, law enforcement, and we've grown. I've been doing this 30 years and have had this particular institute for about 15 at this point. And we've grown so where we do training all over the world directly, and we train other professionals to train our model all over the world. So normally, right now this is not happening because of COVID, but normally we're going to Australia, we're going to New Zealand, we're going to Asia, we're going to the United Kingdom, Canada, and we've got partner agencies in all those places where they're training those professionals to apply our model to help families. And our estimate in 2019, directly or through our partner agencies, we helped potentially over 45,000 kids, maybe over 50,000 kids through the work we do.
Oh, wow. That is so awesome. That is so awesome because when it's an institute, individuals have a little bit more to grab from different angles. And so it's just, of course, what I thought about, I said, okay, this is more like a educational type of thing where individuals are receiving the type of treatment or receiving the type of counseling that it is that they need. So how successful are women after consultation and training from depression and abuse from the Safe and Together Institute?
Well, like I said, we don't see the public directly. All our work is directly through the professionals. So if people come to our virtual academy or come to our trainings, The people who are coming to our training are the judges. The people who are coming to the training are those child protection social workers. And they're coming, and then they're the ones going out and helping other people. So, for instance, we've seen, it's basically the difference. Is somebody showing up at your doorstep, or you interacting with a professional when you've been abused, and somebody saying, well, you've got to keep him out of here, and if you don't keep him out of here, we're going to have to take your kids. Okay, and that's been a response that's been pretty common. So here's somebody's a crime victim, somebody's been beat up, and then somebody's coming to this person and saying, we're child protection, and our job is to try to keep your kids safe, and you're not doing your job. And they're saying this to the victim, and then she gets scared, right? And so what happens is, for those women, the depression isn't just caused by the abuse, or the impact is not just by the abuse, but it's by the system coming in and blaming them. And so what we do is train those professionals to have different conversations and work differently, and come in there and say, look, his behavior to you is not your fault. We know that you've been doing things to try to keep your kids safe, and we want to learn more about what you've been doing, because in most of those cases, she's been working overtime trying to get the kids fed, up to school, to keep the routine going, and her partner may be disrupting that, may be criticizing her, may be doing things that's keeping the kids up at night. He may be forcing them to move so that the kids' schooling and their housing is disrupted, and so she's working to compensate. So have somebody come in and blame her for that is a real injustice. And so you see women actually become the focal point of social services when they shouldn't be, because she's not doing anything wrong and somebody else doing something wrong. So we train the professionals to come and say to this person, you're not responsible for this person. Their behavior is their choice, and the impact of their behavior is their responsibility. So we're going to actually try to talk to him and work with him to help him be a better dad and to be less dangerous to you and the kids. And that's often just what she wants. She doesn't want him to go to jail. She doesn't want him to stop being around her and the kids even necessarily. She says, I just want him to stop being violent. I don't want him to be a better dad. And so this is really important not only for her, but for communities where there may be over-incarceration, there may be, that people may be the victims of racism or poverty. And so there's a lot of forces going on in those families. But a lot of times social services will come in and say, you have to split up. And splitting up doesn't equal safety even necessarily. It may make things worse. So we're trying to get those professionals to focus on safety, and we're trying to get them to listen better to what those survivors say they want, and also to engage those men. It's not always men, but most of the time it is, to engage those men to help them be better dads versus sort of saying the answer is only to lock him up or to kick him out of the family.
So this next question, thank you for that, David. So this next question may be just a little offensive for women, but we still got the acts and things. And so, how many of the percentage of men do you see? Because so let me explain this real quick. And so, some years ago, a long time ago, I was at a friend's house, and so I was visiting, and so it was a commotion that was going on next door at the next door neighbor's house or something like that. And so out of all of the combustion, of course, we thought that the woman was going to come out, and we thought she was going to come out with the blood on her. But we actually saw two EMTs showed up. One was the ambulance, and the other was the law enforcement. But the law enforcement was not putting the husband into handcuffs. They was actually putting the husband on the gurney, the stretcher, and they was putting the handcuffs on the wife. This has been probably about 25, 30 years ago. And so how likely is it for that men come in and they report it? Because I know it's probably a big humility. I mean, it's probably a, humiliation for men to come in and say, hey, look, I've been abused or what have you. So do you see a lot of that with the Institute, or do you see a lot of that in today's society in America as where men are being, domestic, physically abused as well?
Right, sure. So it's a fine question. It's not offensive at all. What we always say is both men and women can be violent, and both men and women can be controlling, right? So that's absolute fact. And that domestic violence happens in all sorts of combinations, all sorts of relationships can happen in heterosexual relationships. It can happen in gay relationships. It can involve trans people. There's really no group that is immune to it, right? So it can happen, across the board. But what we know is the vast majority of domestic violence, the most common scenario is a male perpetrator against a female victim. And that what we know is that when men are violent to women, it's much more likely going to cause physical injury and going to be associated with coercive control, which is really kind of the thing that can do the most damage over a long term in terms of what's going on in the home. And so what you happen is, if you think about it, that if you think about who's afraid. So you can have a woman slap a man, but he may not be afraid of her. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying her slapping him is okay, but he's probably not, and most guys are probably not with most women. Now again, there's always exclusions. They're not going to feel like, she's going to overpower me, or she's going to get control over me physically. And so what you have to really keep in mind is that while you might have two people being physically violent, it's not often equal in terms of the damage, the harm, or the control. And I have to tell you, where I come from, there was a lot of those kind of dual arrests where both men and women were being arrested. And I would work on a lot of those cases, but when you read the case, it wasn't mutual combat. It wasn't equal. It was oftentimes somebody fighting back, and after a long pattern of abuse. And so you can't jump to conclusions, and you can't assume that because a woman's violent, that sort of it's just because she's the primary aggressor. You got to really think about it and look at it and figure out what's going on.
Okay, great. So thank you for that. So with just a few more minutes left, share with the audience a little bit about some of the takeaways that you want them to know about the Safe and Together Institute, as well as you can be able to share your social media handles, as well as to some of the links that they can be able to connect with you, okay?
Sure. Thank you, Diane. It's been great being on the show. So the main place that people want to go is to our website, Safe and Together Institute. And .com, and so safeandtogetherinstitute.com. And there you can access a lot of resources, a lot of free resources. We have on that website a friends and family ally guide that's free to download, or you can ask us to print it for you if you want a lot of copies. We also have something called a Choose to Change campaign, which is directed at people who choose violence, and it's about helping them create healthy and strong networks of support. So these things are great both these things are great for churches, for community groups, for individuals. And those are free resources that are right on our website. Also, if people want to listen and learn more, they can go to our YouTube channel. And all these things basically put in Safe and Together Institute into the social media, whether it's YouTube or Twitter or LinkedIn, and you're going to find us. And the YouTube channel has lots of short videos, educational ones. And then also in terms of, what was I say? I was talking about Twitter and LinkedIn, and my mind just went. Sorry, but in terms of, I'm sorry, about our website. What you also can find is our podcast. We've got a really exciting podcast collaboration, which is myself and my wife, Ruth Stearns Mandel, who's a survivor, who also works here, talking about the work we do. And you can access that through the podcast. And then finally, the Virtual Academy, which is academy.safeandtogetherinstitute.com. So again, academy.safeandtogetherinstitute.com. There's a lot of courses people can take education-wise, but none of these are direct service, Diane. So I want to kind of try to minimize people trying to reach out and say, I'm in this situation, I need help. This is really for professionals and for education. We don't do counseling. We don't do direct service. And so if you want to learn something, if you want to educate yourself, you want to direct your pastor to us, we have a course on faith leaders and domestic abuse. There's just a whole bunch of different things up there on academy.safeandtogetherinstitute.com.
Great. You have been such an awesome guest on today, David. we really appreciate you taking the opportunity to be able to share a lot with us about the domestic violence, about the pros and cons between men and women. Sometimes women suffer through domestic violence, and a lot of times men do as well. And we thank you also for sharing with us in regards to the Save and Together Institute, which has been so helpful and prominent to the audience on today. And so October is Domestic Violence Awareness, and we want the listeners to make sure that they are aware as to you are responsible for reporting things that you do see, whether it's in the workforce, whether it's in your neighborhood, or even whether it's in your own household. We have a responsibility to do. So thank you so much again for being our guest on today. And for all upcoming shows and podcasts, just go to our website at www.womenwhorockwithsuccess.com. So thank you again, David.
Thank you, Diane.